Welcome to Triad Dialogues. Three perspectives, one conversation. Today, we unpack how freedom, democracy, and diversity are written into law and lived in the United States, Colombia, and France. Let us begin with the United States. Steph, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gabby. Well, when people think about the United States, many imagine a diverse and free nation, one that has played an important role in leading the world toward progress. And yeah, as a federal republic, consolidated with the Constitution of 1787, the country has long been defined by a vibrant political system, a strong respect for the rule of law, and fundamental liberties such as freedom of expression and freedom of belief. At least, that is what exists on paper. In reality, the nation has begun to experience visible strains such as rising political polarization or tensions in the electoral process, flaws in the judicial and immigration systems, and also growing social and economic inequality. Later in this episode, we take a closer look at these warning signs and explore how they challenge the very values the US was built upon. For now, let's listen also to what is happening in a different country. Well, what do we know about Colombia?
Yes, Steph. Getting closer to this side of the world, we find Colombia, a country often described as one of the most vibrant democracies in Latin America. According to Article 1 of the Colombian Constitution, Colombia is a social state of law, organized in the form of a unitary, decentralized republic, with autonomy of its territorial identities, democratic, participatory, and pluralistic. In other words, democracy isn't just a principle here, it's the foundation of the state. Even though it's a democracy that has faced challenges, it continues to grow stronger through civic participation and dialogue. And something really interesting is the way Colombians use art, media, and social movements to challenge and inspire the rest of the country, or even the rest of the world. Beyond politics, what makes Colombia truly unique is its diversity, a nation enriched by indigenous people, Afro-Colombian communities, and a wide spectrum of cultural traditions that shape its vibrant identity. And now, to Europe. Gabby, how does France connect to these three aspects?
Well, Val, thank you so much for passing the mic to me. I feel like I just got the golden ticket of this conversation. Well, France, for its part, has long carried the banner of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But the story is more complex. The very word democracy only became central in French discourse in 1848. Decades after the Revolution of 1789 had already declared the sovereignty of the people. Thinkers like Montesquieu and Rousseau imagined democracy as direct popular rule, almost divine in ambition, but history shows that France's republican model has often balanced between ideals and exclusion. Today, democracy and freedom in France are guaranteed in law, yet civil society organizations warned of what they call a structural deterioration of public freedom since 2017. Secularism, originally designed to protect freedom of belief, has shifted. Laws banning hijabs in schools or abayas in classrooms now raise questions about whether neutrality has become a tool of exclusion. At the same time, France is a land of diversity, with millions of people from North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and beyond. But instead of celebrating difference openly, the Republican model insists on assimilation, a sharp contrast with Colombians' pluralism or America's multiculturalism. So, Steph, I'll hand it over to you because you're the expert on how diversity actually plays out across the Atlantic. So, go ahead.
That's an interesting point, Gabby. Take France, for example. On paper, the country promises equality for all citizens, including immigrants, and it does have a large population from across Africa and other regions. But here's the twist. Instead of celebrating cultural diversity, many people end up identifying only as French. Some argue this comes from a lack of real inclusion by the government. and a recent controversy in 2023 showed distinction clearly, where abayas, which is a traditional clothing, it was banned from state schools, raising questions about freedom and representation. Now compare that with the United States. Diversity there looks a bit more liberal. Immigrants from around the world have been arriving since the 17th century. Today, large communities from Mexico, China, India, and the Philippines are part of the nation's fabric. With so many languages spoken, the government has even tried to support non-English speakers in legal processes. But here is when it gets complicated. The White House recently pushed for English to be the official language. Supporters say this promotes unity and the so-called American dream. Critics, however, warned it could actually limit access to services for immigrants and downplay the real benefits of multilingualism. As researcher Coopers points out, language don't just help us communicate, they open doors to new perspectives, ideas, and real connections.
In Colombia, diversity takes on a different meaning. Colombians are deeply proud of their diversity, which is woven into daily life celebrated across the country. A clear example is the Carnaval de Negros y Blancos, taking place in the southwest of Colombia. The main purpose of this carnival is to celebrate diversity and promote the respect for all races. When we shift from cultural celebrations to politics, the picture changes. In Colombia, democracy is often described as vibrant but fragile. Citizens are active in elections and protests, yet corruption and bribery remain big challenges that weaken trust in institutions. Beyond the scandals at the top, in some regions, vote buying is still common, people being offered cash or goods in exchange for their votes. Now, politics in the United States works a bit differently. The US is a federal republic, which means power is divided between the national government and 50 states, and even local counties. This protects against concentrated power, but it also creates new challenges. A bipartisan report from the Carter Center found that deep partisanship, combined with the fragmented system, has fueled growing distrust in elections. Today, many Americans believe results are manipulated or unfair. In fact, Pew Research shows that nearly 60% of Americans are dissatisfied with how democracy works, and even some of them doubt their votes are counted at all. So while Colombia struggles with corruption that erodes institutions, and the United States with polarization and distrust in elections, both countries show us that democracy is not static. It's a constant work in progress, shaped by culture, history, and the people themselves.
What a delightful analysis, Val. Well, I think the paradox is clear. Freedom and democracy cannot exist without diversity. Yet, France often turns its republican ideals into mechanisms of exclusion. In 2025, when the US embassy pressured French companies to abandon diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, Minister Laurent Saint-Martin defended inclusion as non-negotiable because it reflects French values. Yet, those same values collapsed when Muslim women were banned from schools, sports, and even from wearing the hijab in the Paris 2024 Olympics, as Amnesty International denounced. The killing of Nahel, a 17-year-old of North African descent shot by police in June 2023, and the protests that followed revealed how racism rooted in France's colonial past continues to erode the promise of, as we can say in French, égalité. And history reminds us that these contradictions are not new. For example, I'm going to pronounce this in French because it's an important name, but Olympe de Gouges was executed in 1793 for demanding women's rights, showing how freedom in France has always had limits set by power. By contrast, Colombia, even with traces of corruption through its 1991 constitution and culture festivals like, as Val mentioned, Carnaval de Blancos y Negros, celebrates pluralism as the core of democracy, while the US, despite polarization and attacks on they, still protects multiculturalism through constitutional rights. So, if Colombia teaches that diversity can strengthen democracy, and the US reveals the fragility of popular rule, France challenges us to ask, what kind of liberty it is if it's not liberty for all? So I leave you with that question. And that's all for today, my friends. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, bye bye.